Today we're going to be combining loads of tutorials in one place, giving you a huge number of tips for how to get the most out of Squarespace. In fact, we've got 35 tips in under 30 minutes. I think that's enough of an introduction. Let's crack on. To kick things off, I'm going to share the right tools for the job. First of all, I would head over to squareforge.net, our entire toolkit for building professional layouts in Squarespace. We've got designs for every single section of the site, and the great news is you don't need to spend a penny to be able to take inspiration from these designs and replicate them. If you then head over to the Squareforge YouTube channel, you will see a string of tutorials where I demonstrate how to rebuild all of these layouts from the ground up. If you want to take it to the next step, you can purchase Squareforge for a one-off fee or have regular updates with our monthly subscription, and I've left a link in the description. Squareforge is a great starting point if you get designer's block and you need some inspiration for how you can develop your next professional Squarespace website. Let's have a look at some other Chrome extensions that I've got installed that are also available on Firefox. Let's start off with Colorzilla. This allows you to color pick any color from any page. Not just your own website, but you could also head across to colorlovers.com. And this is a website that allows you to search limitless color palettes. And combining this with Colorzilla means that we can color pick a solid color swatch and bring it back into our Squarespace website. We can do this multiple times to build up our full color palette. Next up, we have specialist Squarespace plugins. So if we head back to the admin view of our website and we click on this Chrome extension, which is Squarespace ID blocks, if you search for Find Squarespace IDs, this should come up in the search along with a number of other similar tools. This tool provides me with all of the block IDs for similar areas within Squarespace and additionally section IDs as well. And the great news is, like Colorzilla, like Squareforge, it's completely free to get going with. If you're looking to pay a little extra and take your Squarespace productivity to the max, you can also install Squarespace Website Tools Pro, which allows you to replicate full sections from one Squarespace website to another and even duplicate large areas of content, like for example, a blog on Squarespace 7.0 and bring it across to Squarespace 7.1. There's way too much for me to show in this video, and I will be having dedicated videos on Squarespace tools coming up in the future. Another of my favorite Chrome extensions that I use regularly is Image Downloader. Again, there are multiple tools that you can download from Chrome that will achieve this, but you can just tick on the images you want to download, even if these photos are not available on the right-click option, and then those files will be downloaded to your downloads folder on your computer. All built into Chrome, these tools will save you a considerable amount of time. So those are tools to get you up and running with designing professional websites in Squarespace. Now let's have a look at building some page designs. I've got a playground which I've used for previous tutorials, and this page is basically a free-for-all that I can design from the ground up. First of all, we need to understand that Squarespace websites are built in sections. And in this example, we can see divides between each section and how we can update them accordingly. I'd strongly recommend that you break long and detailed pages into multiple sections, even shorter pages if you want a more professional, balanced view, and look for a banding option where we have, in this example, a white background section, light silver, back into black. We've got a section divider here. That is, again, another feature available within Squarespace. We've got a card hero section that we can decide to move these sections up and down within our page. So again, we've got a lot of customization. With this card hero, we can edit the section at any time. We can change the color pack that's assigned to it based on the overarching colors and styles within our website. Plus, we can change our background image. We can upload photos, we can upload videos, or from our already uploaded images via the library, or we can browse stock images and find just the perfect stock photo for our website. We don't even need to stop there. We have focal points, allowing us to change the focal point of each photo to fit within the frame. We've got a hero in letterbox mode here, and by moving the focal point, we can adjust how the photo appears. We can replace that photo at any time, or we can jump into Squarespace's own image editor to edit further. If you'd like to control things, or you're looking at reducing the file size of our hero unit, which is always good for search engines, cropping to a different ratio can really help. So we can match up the photo with the average ratio of our hero, depending on multiple screen sizes. And that means that the website isn't loading this section of the photo or this top section here, making it quick to edit. We've also got the option to increase the sharpness, saturation, contrast, brightness, all of the tools you'd expect with simple, straightforward editing. To take this a step further and produce beautiful, custom-built hero sections for our websites, I'd recommend having a look at Adobe Photoshop and the new AI content-aware tools, like, for example, the ability to extend the image left to right. I've got loads of tutorials available on the Pixelheist channel that covers these particular tools. Once we've got the background image in place, we can then continue to add as many sections as we want. A time-saving tool is to be able to click and drag multiple items. Notice it doesn't select the background image because that's locked in and treated separately to our content. Once we've selected multiple sections, we can expand and contract the size of these elements. We can access them individually, move blocks around, even adjust the positioning of our button so it fits to the right-hand side, or again, select it to align vertically. Loads of customization options. If we decided that we do not like this card background, we can once again go into the style background and remove that effect. Bear in mind that we do need to have some sort of separation between the background image, where there's a lot of detail going on here, and the text. So I'm going to re-enable this feature, but we can change our colors, again based on our color pack, or by choosing a custom image, which I'd recommend using sparingly, because usually we can find the colors we need via our color packs. We can also jump in and edit our site-wide palette. If I double click on any section within this text block, we can see I can now change and update the content. A best practice tip is to use heading 1 for the main heading for our page and use it once per page. If we were to decide to move this as a secondary hero section further down the page, this is where we would need to change this to a heading 2. But in this case, we're going to put it right at the top and we want that saved as a heading 1. If we go back and edit the card settings again, if we want a little bit more padding space around our text, we can again change that. We've got 3 default options for small, medium, and large. Or we could click on these 3 dots and customize the spacing. If you're just starting out, I would recommend sticking to the defaults because they're tried and tested by professional designers. Additionally, for another pro effect, we can look at blend mode. If you're familiar with Adobe Photoshop, you'll recognize a lot of these tools here, but the screen tool is a fantastic feature that provides a cutout effect on our text whilst having a solid card color. If I decided to change that color to make it a bit stronger, we can see it only works on lighter colors. But we can play around with this effect and see what it comes up with. So let's choose darken and choose black for our block. We can see now that that has made the entire block black. But if we were to select everything within that text and change the text color, we can now see that we have changed this so it cuts out the background. We have to be careful not to have too much of the background coming through, but this is a really nice custom advanced effect that we can add into our image. Another pro hack, we can add in a shape behind this text block. So if I go to Shapes and move this block, overlaying it first. If I choose color, it changes that to a black and white overlay. And in this example, I can enable the blur effect. And then combine that with some additional tools, like for example, the screen effect here, which blends out the background. Now I can decide to move this layer behind the text. So we've got predominantly white text, but we can still see a tiny bit of the background coming through. I can tweak these settings to get it just as I want. But these are just some examples of how we can use some of the advanced effects on our shapes, image blocks, and text blocks to get advanced styles. If I wanted to add in a line or a block above this to add an extra trim, I can of course do that. I can either choose the line option, but in this case, I'm going to choose shape. I'm going to make that shape as small as possible. And even though we can't get it to fit snugly at the top of that block, this is just a few settings away. I go back into Edit Sections, and instead of having a gap option here, I'm going to make it compact so there are no gaps between each of the 24-column grid blocks. I could decide to break off the button, should I want to, and I'm also going to edit this button, go into Design, and I'm going to get it to fill that content block. A chunkier button is just what I need in this case. I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to duplicate this button, and I'm going to have a second button, with this one being a secondary or even tertiary design style. I'm going to go for secondary, which gives it an underline effect. The only thing I just need to be careful about is whether it's legible over top of the background. So it could be a case of just moving those buttons around. And now I have two call to action buttons in our hero design. I've got a bar that goes above to add an extra trim to our content area. Or I could take it one step further and expand the content in this block edge to edge. So by disabling fill screen, I've now brought that block right the way to the top. I can extend our hero section. I can duplicate this block, then drag it right the way down to the bottom of the frame. So I've made an effect of this entire section. I can now move this to the back behind both buttons. The buttons can be realigned within that section, and it's a case of finding the right balance. If we don't want it to go that far and we want it to extend so far, again, we've got that option as well. More custom designs, all built within Squarespace directly. Next up, we can turn this section into a hero grid. A hero grid is where we have multiple elements or signposts in one key section. For example, we could decide to add a gallery and edit the gallery independently to the background image. We've got to be careful not to have too much going on with our image at any point. Another great example of using a hero grid is having a video block. So although autoplay videos have become less popular, having a play option, which invites the user to play a video as and when they please, can work very well. Once again, we can decide how this layout's going to take shape. For example, we could extend this text block to match the video block. So once again, bringing this section further down and adjusting those blocks accordingly. We've now got quite an interesting effect. And if we were to look at the settings for this video, we know that we can upload a video to the library. We can add a link from YouTube or Vimeo, or select a video that we've already uploaded previously. If we want to put in custom design text about that video, once again, we can go to the add block and let's add in some extra text. The reason I can't click on that add block over top of the logo is because this is custom code that drops the logo further down the section. So that's interfering a little bit with the admin area, but it works fine on the front of the website. So what I need to remember to do is just to click off that logo to edit the add block. I can then put text into that text block below. Another great time-saving hack, if we select our text block, go into the edit options, and we've got the option to fit the content to the frame. This means that this will always fit on one line, and as we reduce the size of the text block by one grid column at a time, it will reduce the text accordingly. Let's have a look at additional styling options. If we wanted to select some text and add some additional effects, we highlight the text that we want to edit, then go to the underline option or highlight option, and here we could decide to put a circle around our text. We can, of course, change this to an action color to make it jump out on our designs. If you're thirsty for more design tips, let's have a look at some keyboard shortcuts. Some of the standard ones. If I was to click on this text block, I can highlight the text I want and press Command B to turn on bold on this area. So that's Command B on a Mac and Control B on a PC. And in fact, all of these shortcuts that I'll be showing you in the next few moments will be available on both Mac and PC. So that's Command on a Mac and Control on a PC. If we wanted to make a section italic, again, that's Command and I. If you hover over these options in the text toolbar for just a few seconds, it will in fact tell you each of the shortcuts. However, this doesn't extend to the drop-down items in this menu. So if we want to learn the heading sections, on a Mac it's Command Option and then 1 for paragraph 2, 2 for paragraph 1, 3 for heading 4, and Command Option 5 for heading 2. If you're using Squarespace regularly, I'd strongly recommend learning these shortcuts because they save you a huge amount of time, especially if you're bringing some content in from AI tools like ChatGPT. That will mean that you'll often have to reformat the text as you add it in. Next up, we're going to look at multiple column layouts. So I'm going to copy these FAQs out of this section, and we're going to create a blank section. So I'm going to click on Add Section. I'm now going to click on Blank Section. And in this area, the first thing I'm going to do is add a text block. As I start to drag it, we can see that the guides come up and the center of the page is marked out. So I'm going to bring it in not quite 50%, so it's going to be 3 blocks shy of 50%, which is 9 columns width. And I'm going to paste our text block in. I'm not worried about the exact content at the moment, I'm just building the structure. So this is another shortcut, Command and D, to duplicate this text block. Of course, we've got the option to edit it via the menu as well. I'm now going to bring the second column right the way over to the edge of our design. And we can see that there's a full column gap between these items here. So I can mirror that. But then I could also decide to put a title. Instead of having it above the content, we can have it offset to the left for a unique layout style. Again, Command Option 5 is a shortcut that will turn that into a heading 1. And I could decide that I want a line underneath the FAQs, as shown in this example here. I can click on that line tool. I could either decide to keep that gap consistent here, or I could bring that line all the way across. That's where it comes down to your personal tastes. In my case, I prefer it with the extra gap. If I want these columns to be slightly wider with more compact gaps between them, again, I can go into Edit section and just remove all of the gaps. So that makes it more compact. And I can always go in and customize this. Once we've got a layout that we really like, and we may want to use it on other pages in the future, we can go back into the section toolbar and click on Save Section. This will save it. When we add a new section in future, we can now choose from the Squarespace default or our saved sections as shown here. So every one of these layouts, apart from what we've just added here, are all available in the SquareForge. And this is the whole point of this tool, is that it auto saves all of these structures so we can build them from scratch. But if I wanted to add in this section on this page or another page on this same website, I can do that. Then I can choose to reorder it, go in and even change the color packs associated with it so we can have that high contrast. So structurally, 2 identical layouts, but looking quite different. There was one step though that I should have taken you through, and that is jumping across to mobile. By clicking on this mobile view option, we can see our website in mobile view. And before we save as a favorite, we really need to make sure that we have got our content edited. Because there's only 3 text blocks on here and 1 line, it's pretty good as it is, but we can see here that there's nowhere near enough space between these 2 options. We won't be able to get it perfect just because of how the grid column works. We can still see that that's narrower than the section below. So we can either make it a clear difference by adding extra space, or we can just go for the nearest option. But by going through and editing this on mobile, we can see that this text block is way too long. So we can shorten that and get it so it functions clearly and effectively on mobile. We can also adjust the items like the width of this line on mobile view, and it will not affect the desktop equivalent. I can then move this section down to give a little bit more breathing space below our title. If we're not happy with going through and changing all of this item to mobile, the quickest solution at this stage would be to remove this section. And this is where I would jump back into desktop view because you get more tools and it's easier to edit. And now we can resave this section as favorites. Now it's working on both desktop and mobile layouts. Now when we go to add a new section, there's a little bit of housekeeping I'd like to do. The latest design that we've saved as a favorite is always top left. So therefore this one is the one that doesn't work as effectively on mobile. So some good housekeeping would be to tick that one and then send that to the trash can. We'll now add our new section in. Once again, go in and changing the colors. This is far quicker than editing on mobile once we've done these steps each time. We now have two tried and tested on both desktop and mobile layouts that we can reuse on any page. I think I'm going to go with the black version and get rid of these two additional options here. We can see this dividing line option here. And the best thing to do is always match it up with the colors of the section below so we have a seamless integration between sections on our design. To change this divider, we go into Edit Section, scroll down a little bit in this toolbar, and we can see the divider option is ticked on. We can toggle it off at any point, or we can bring it back in, and we can decide to change the shape. Angled lines, we can have curved effects, rounded corners, and I think we'll go with this one. And as we can see, this style has been flipped. So if I was to click on this option, we can have this almost paper peel away from the corner effect, and that works quite well. We can adjust the height of that, so from something from very subtle to something very dramatic. The medium option is always a good place to start. But when we use these dividers, it's always important to consider this as part of our overarching design. We want the same style carrying through, or at least the same flow. For example, we may want in this section to have this peel going to the left. We want to remember the settings. So if I go for medium with a large width on the style, because if I go to small, we can see it repeats the pattern, which is a little bit too jarring in this case. And we can flip it left and right, or vertically. So now we can decide now to add a divider on this section here, but this time we may want to offset it. So we need to enable the divider. And as we can see, it's mirrored the section above. Although, because this is on a black background, it's now mirroring with white below, which is exactly what we want. To make this section more interesting, we could decide to, again, go into the settings for it and then flip it horizontally so it comes in from the left. So now we have this repeating pattern, almost like leaves floating to the ground. And that can work really well for the next section coming in below. Use sparingly, but section dividers can add a great degree of customization to your Squarespace designs. Next up, we're going to look at one of these more advanced layouts, and I'm going to show you how to rebuild this using multiple blocks in one section. So we're going to add a blank section. I'm going to change this to a black background so we can differentiate it from the section above. And now I'm going to proceed to add our first text block. I'm going to borrow the content from this section here, and we're not going to worry about having unique content for each of the 9 blocks because we're more concerned about getting the layout right at this stage. I'm going to bring that in, and once I've got that text block in place, I can start duplicating it, but I'm not going to jump the gun there. And now I'm going to add an image block. In this area, I can decide to use icons or images. And I'm going to select something from the library. And let's go for this eagle here. When I first place the image in, you can see it's got a border left and right, and that's not the effect that we're after. So if I go to the image settings and then design, I can get this image to fill out to the edges of the block, or alternatively, I could decide to go for a different shape. The circle could work really nicely here, and that's what I'm going to go with. We can see that this isn't quite working for me at the moment. It's a bit too compact. So what I can do is just move that up because it's in a circle shape. It keeps its shape regardless of the size of the icon. And now we've got better breathing space between the image and the text. To create additional space, I could align our image to the left, meaning that we've got that image fitting the left-hand dividing line. But for me, I think it's a more comfortable fit with that image aligned to the center. We can also see that the focal point on the image isn't where we want it to be. So again, we can focus on that, or we can jump in and edit that photo and crop it to square. I could press save. And now, once I've got that section and I'm happy with it, I think I'm going to add in smaller padding on this section area. To make it slightly more compact, I'm going to add in our dividers, top and bottom. This will only apply the divider to the bottom of the page. I would need to go in and edit the section above to add our divider here. And this is the section I need to flip the other way. Into our divider settings, flip horizontal, and now we've got that wave effect. This might be a bit much for you. I don't know if I'd use it this heavily, but let's just keep the consistency for now. Before I go and replicate this section, and that's how we create our 9 in a row, I'm going to go into mobile view and get these aligned as I want on mobile view first. It'll just mean that we won't have to double up on the workload afterwards. So I'm going to select that and align it to the left, and then move it into position. I'm then going to move that text block and we can't really get around this at the moment. The spacing isn't quite wide enough between them, so I could just make that image smaller instead. And that's a good effect on mobile view. Now we've got the first section in place on mobile, we can now select both of these items and duplicate them. I can then proceed to move them down, either directly below or add another full column. But the problem we've got here is that space is a little bit too wide. We're not having consistent spacing with a macro and micro white space between each of our elements. So instead we can go into the section once again, and let's go for double or nearly double the spacing between each of the blocks. That's still looking okay. But now when we look at the gaps between each of the rows, it's looking better. But this is where we can customize the vertical gaps to be a bit wider than the horizontal ones. And also, we can now choose to align these text blocks to the middle. This means that they will align to the middle of this image because the blocks are the same. Again, another little design hack that can make your layouts look stronger. We just need to jump back on now and check this on mobile view, and we can see that there's too much of a gap there. So I'm just reducing that. It is a little compact, so I've got a decision to make. Do I want a wide gap, or do I want a narrow gap, or do I jump back in and change the spacing between each of the elements? And I think that's what I'm going to do. See if I can squeeze a little bit more spacing out of this. So if I go up to say 34 and see how that looks, if it's not too much in this example, so there's nice even spacing and not too much white space, and if we go to mobile, we get a better balance. As designers, and with using software like Squarespace, we're always making trade-offs. Once I'm happy with that, I can duplicate both of these. So we got our row of 3. Again, I'm going to quickly check this on mobile. It's going to save me time later on. And we can see I've got some gaps to tighten up here. Jump back to desktop. Now we've got our 3. You probably guessed it. We're going to duplicate all 3 of these sections and bring them into the middle. And let's just check these on mobile. The spacing between each of these is now perfect because we've been checking on mobile at each stage, but we just need to make them fit directly below the ones above. Now we go back again and we just replicate for our final column. Test on mobile. And it's the same thing. It's added an extra space between those options. But now we've got 9 blocks in a row, great for benefits or features, or even signposting. So that card effect is now available for you to save as a favorite and bring it into any subsequent page. Of course, it will look much better when you've got real content, as the example above, and of course different images for every single block. But there we have it, 30 minutes of Squarespace tips and design tricks for your different layouts within the Squarespace platform. Hope you found this useful, hope you've enjoyed. I've got loads more of these coming up around the corner, so subscribe to the channel and don't forget to head over and check out SquareForge as well. There's loads of information in the description. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Cheers. If you want to say in the future direction of the content that I'll be creating at Pixel Haze Academy and to get involved in our community, all you need to do is leave me your email address. We're looking to create our first community in the coming weeks, and I'm going to be throwing everything I've got at it. That includes our Moonshot Transformation Program, our entire library of online courses, the opportunity to engage with me in regular group sessions. There's more information in the description, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can develop this. Thanks again, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.